So what is it? Payload. It's the weight of equipment and personal possessions you can carry in your motorhome without overloading. That's it in a nutshell. Seems simple. As we just said, safety and legality. It's important you don't overload it and you don't want to get stopped by the police and prohibited from carrying on your journey. And we said payloads are not always realistic and they can be misleading, and so payloads are criteria is very important when you're buying a motorhome or new kit. This should help, and it does to some extent, that if you buy a motorhome from a UK manufacturer or an Adria who are members of the NCC, NCC will certify your motorhome that it does comply with the requirements of that EN standard. And there is one particular point which is very useful to have that backing. Right, now we go back to what we were talking about, the essential habitation equipment which is in your MRO. What does that include? Gas cylinders when filled, so that would be your standard 80% in fact. Freshwater storage, they allow for 90% of it to be full, not full, just 90%. Your central heating system full, your toilet flushing tank full, but your waste tank, grey water tank and toilet waste is classed as empty. They have an allowance for the hookup cable, 4 kilograms, and your leisure battery. Mass in running order, that's what it stands for. And the mass in running order, as we said, includes the essential habitation equipment. It makes an allowance for the driver of 75 kilograms, a spare wheel, if you don't have the squirting foam instead, 90% of your fuel tank capacity, the engine oil and the coolants, okay, and the basic unladen vehicle. So if you see MRO quoted on the specification, then that's what it should include. The big problem is at the bottom there, MRO can be subject to a plus or minus 5% tolerance. That's because of a European directive that says manufacturers can have that tolerance. And that's a problem because if your MRO is 2,000 kilograms, just imagine if they say it's 2,000 kilograms, but in fact it's 5%, actually 5% over. That starts to eat into your payload. If you have an NCC certified motorhome, the weight that an NCC certified motorhome manufacturer declares is a weight which the actual MRO cannot exceed. It can be less, but it can't exceed it.
Penalties for overload up to £5,000, and that's on per offence. Front axle, overall weight and back axle could soon have you with a penalty up to £15,000. Frightening, I know, but realistic figures is what we're concerned with. What they are. Those have what's in place called a graduated fixed penalty scheme, which gives you a fine based on the degree of overload you're in, the severity of that and the fixed penalty amount. So, jumping quickly into those. Up to 10% is a fixed penalty amount of £60, 10 to 15 of 120, and above 15, 200. What I don't show there is that should be a 15 to 30, because above 30% is an immediate court summons and it's likely to be a hefty fine. There is in print, and I have available if anyone wants to see, the VOSA fixed penalty scheme, an allowance that should be given by VOSA of 5% for an overload without a penalty. That should be an advisory, or at least a slap to wrist and a bit of help along your way into what vehicles should be loaded up as, how to reposition weights. That's all well and good for VOSA side of 5%, but not for your insurance company, unfortunately. Find yourself overloaded and have an accident, and you're likely to find that your insurance is invalid. Similarly in Europe, unfortunately they don't run the same scheme as VOSA, that an overload there is likely to land you with a hefty fine, and you will have to remove the goods from your vehicle before you can move on.